Have you ever felt different, like you carry a world inside you that no one else can see? Maybe you're one of the rare and mysterious introverts. But listen up, being introverted isn't just about liking to be alone. True introversion goes way beyond that. It's connected to how you perceive, feel, and process life. It's about where you seek energy, in internal silence, and not in the chaos of the outside world. Carl Jung, the great Swiss psychologist, was the first to talk about introversion and extroversion, but he made sure to emphasize something essential. No one is completely introverted or extroverted. Each of us carries both poles, just with different predominances. Jung said that these forces coexist within us, and that our personality is like a dance between the internal and external world. This means that your introversion is unique, and no one on the planet feels life exactly the way you feel it. Over the years, Jung's studies were deepened and gave rise to the famous 16 personality types, of which 8 are introverted. But even among these 8 types, there are variations so profound that we can say some are truly rare and enigmatic. People who seem to live one step beyond time, observing the world with a clarity that few possess. If you feel that you think differently, that you don't fit into superficial conversations, or that your silence is often misinterpreted, maybe you're one of these rare types. In this video, we're going to explore not just what it means to be introverted, but also reveal which are the most mysterious and misunderstood types. And in the end, you'll understand why your unique way of seeing the world is, in fact, an extraordinary force. When Carl Jung introduced the world to the concepts of introversion and extroversion, he wasn't trying to divide people into rigid boxes. On the contrary, Jung believed that every human being carries within themselves both forces, the desire to turn inward and the need to interact with the outside world. For him, no one is purely introverted or purely extroverted, because that would be almost impossible to sustain. He himself stated, "A purely introverted or purely extroverted man would be an impossible abstraction. In reality, an individual is always a mixture of both attitudes. What differentiates an introverted person is only the predominance of energy directed inward, toward thoughts, memories, ideas, and reflections. But this doesn't mean they don't like interacting with other people or that they live in complete isolation. It just means that the center of their vital force is in their internal world, and not in the relentless pursuit of external stimuli. The introvert, when in excess of socialization, feels drained, needing to recharge their energy in moments of solitude." Jung also described 4 fundamental psychological functions: sensation, intuition, thinking, and feeling. Each person tends to develop some of these functions more than others, and it's the combination of them that forms what we now call personality types. This pioneering vision was the foundation for the MBTI, Myers-Briggs Type Indicator model, which expanded Jung's ideas and classified people into 16 distinct personalities, half of which are introverted. Therefore, when we talk about types of introverts, we're not defining something fixed or rigid, but rather patterns of how each person observes and interacts with the world. That's the beauty of Jung's study, understanding that each individual is a complex universe, in constant movement, and that true strength lies precisely in how we balance our interior and exterior. Modern personality study has a deep debt to Carl Jung. He was the first to realize that beyond the difference between introversion and extroversion, there were dominant psychological functions that shape how each person perceives and reacts to the world. Jung identified 4 main functions: thinking, feeling, intuition, and sensation. Each of these functions could be oriented inward, introverted, or outward, extroverted. From this combination, unique psychological profiles emerged, which explain why 2 quiet people, for example, can be so different from each other. Decades later, Catherine Briggs and her daughter Isabel Myers expanded these concepts to create the MBTI, Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, one of the most well-known personality classifications in the world. They organized Jung's ideas into 16 psychological types, divided into 4 major pairs of preferences: introversion, I, or extroversion, E, sensing, S, or intuition, N, thinking, T, or feeling, F, judging, J, or perceiving, P. Among these 16 types, 8 are predominantly introverted, but each one expresses introversion in a different way, whether through an analytical and strategic mind, artistic sensitivity, or a deep emotional connection with the world. This classification shouldn't be seen as a closed box, but as a map to better understand who you are. Jung insisted that no typology could completely define a person, because the human mind is dynamic and full of contradictions. The MBTI, however, is a powerful tool for recognizing patterns of behavior and self-knowledge, allowing introverts to understand their strengths and learn to use their nature in their favor, instead of fighting against it. Knowing these roots is like turning on a light in a dark room. Suddenly, everything that seemed confusing starts to make sense. And it's this journey of clarity that you'll experience in the next topics, when we reveal the rarest and most mysterious types of introverts. Being introverted doesn't just mean liking to be alone or avoiding large groups of people. Introversion is, in essence, a way of directing energy. While extroverts recharge their forces by interacting with the outside world, events, conversations, excitement, introverts seek their source of energy within themselves in moments of silence, introspection, and reflection. They don't live in isolation, but find in the internal world a space of balance and clarity. It's a common mistake to think that every introvert is shy or insecure. Shyness is related to fear of judgment, while introversion is linked to the preference for less stimulating environments. An introvert can be confident and sociable, but they'll need periods of pause to process experiences and reorganize their thoughts. This pause isn't weakness, but a natural way to recover mental energy. Another fundamental trait of the introvert is the depth with which they perceive situations. They rarely settle for superficial conversations or quick interactions. They prefer a genuine connection, where words have weight and meaning. Often, while others act impulsively, the introvert observes, analyzes, and only then responds, which gives them a clearer and more strategic view of what's happening. This characteristic makes introverts stand out in areas that require deep analysis, creativity, sensitivity, and independent thinking. However, because they live in a society that frequently values those who speak louder or constantly expose themselves, many introverts grow up believing there's something wrong with being more reserved. The truth is exactly the opposite. This introspective nature is a silent power, capable of seeing what goes unnoticed by others. The mind of an introvert is like an ocean that's calm at first glance, but deep and full of invisible internal currents. While many people live focused on external stimuli, introverts explore internal layers of thought, connecting ideas that others don't even notice. This ability to analyze, imagine, and create in silence is what makes these individuals so mysterious and fascinating. The introvert sees nuances. Where many see only the surface of a situation, they perceive hidden details, silent motivations, invisible context. That's why so many introverts seem to have a kind of internal radar, anticipating events or understanding people intuitively. This ability is born from the habit of observing before acting, of thinking before speaking. But this mystery can also generate misunderstanding. Since the introvert doesn't feel the need to expose everything they think, others might interpret them as distant, cold, or even indifferent. In reality, they're absorbing information and analyzing every detail. What for many is just silence, for the introvert is an active process of perception. Another fascinating point is that many of humanity's greatest works of art, inventions, and discoveries came from people who needed to isolate themselves to think, imagine, and create. The introvert has the rare ability to concentrate deeply, diving for hours into a single idea or project, something many people can't do in today's accelerated world. That's why the strength of the introvert isn't in speaking louder, but in perceiving and understanding better. It's in silence that they find answers, build ideas, and transform their sensitivity into something extraordinary. This mystery isn't weakness. It's the key to a mind that thinks beyond the surface. Many people believe that all introverts are the same, but this is far from the truth. Just as each ocean has its own tides and depths, each introvert manifests this characteristic in a unique way. It was through Jung's studies and the MBTI that we discovered that there are, within the universe of 16 psychological types, 8 types of introverts, each with completely distinct strengths, motivations, and ways of seeing the world. Some introverts are visionaries, capable of drawing complex strategies and seeing patterns that others ignore. Others have a deep emotional side, connecting with people in an almost intuitive and empathetic way. There are still those who find in art, creativity, or logical analysis their true territory, exploring ideas or expressing emotions in a unique and authentic way. These 8 types don't exist to put fixed labels on someone. but to help understand which functions dominate your mind and how you interact with the world around you. Knowing these differences is powerful because it allows you to understand your strengths and also the natural challenges that come with your psychological type. Throughout the next topics, we're going to explore the rarest and most mysterious types of introverts. You might notice traits of yours in more than one profile, and that's normal, since no one is purely one thing. What's important is recognizing yourself in these characteristics and seeing how they explain the way you feel and act. Get ready, because this journey through the 8 types of introverts will show that your difference might actually be your greatest strength. Let's start with the silent visionaries and go all the way to the deep dreamers, revealing the secrets that each type carries. The silent visionary, INTJ. Among all introverted types, the INTJ is considered one of the most strategic and visionary. They see the world like a chessboard, always thinking several moves ahead. The INTJ rarely gets carried away by improvisation, because they prefer to plan with precision and calculate risks before acting. For them, each decision is part of a larger system, of a plan that needs to make sense both in the present and in the future. This introverted type is driven by grand ideas and the pursuit of efficiency and concrete results. Unlike other profiles which might be more emotional or spontaneous, the INTJ is guided by an extremely clear internal logic. They observe the world in silence, connect information, and form strategies that often go unnoticed by those who are distracted by the daily rush. But what makes the INTJ mysterious is precisely the contrast between their active mind and their external behavior. They don't talk much, but when they speak, their words carry weight. They prefer silence over superficial conversations, and this posture can make others see them as distant or cold. However, this distance is just a way to preserve their energy and maintain focus on their goals. The INTJ is known as the architect of the mind, someone capable of imagining a different future and finding ways to make it real. Great inventors, scientists, and visionary leaders have this profile. However, this type also faces the challenge of being misunderstood, since many people can't keep up with their depth and mental clarity. If you identify with the idea of planning in silence, observing more than speaking, and setting long-term goals, maybe you're a silent visionary. And this ability to see what others don't see might be your greatest weapon in the world. The deep empath, INFJ. The INFJ is considered the rarest type among all personality profiles, representing less than 2% of the population. They carry a unique mixture of emotional sensitivity, sharp intuition, and a deep sense of purpose. Unlike other introverted types that prefer to maintain a certain distance from others' emotional world, the INFJ feels as if they can read people's emotions, almost like they have a sixth sense to understand what's behind words. The INFJ's mind is like an emotional radar. They perceive small changes in tone of voice, looks, or attitudes, and often know what someone is feeling before that person even realizes it themselves. This makes them a natural counselor, someone who attracts trust and comfort. But this same ability can be a source of emotional exhaustion, since they absorb others' pain as if it were their own. The INFJ seeks meaning in everything they do. They don't settle for superficial conversations or empty goals. They want to leave a mark on the world, help, transform, inspire. Often, they feel like they carry a kind of silent mission, something that guides them even when they can't explain exactly why. However, this profile is frequently misunderstood. Their emotional depth and tendency to isolate themselves to process feelings can be seen as strange by those who don't understand this nature. The INFJ doesn't seek popularity, they seek authenticity, both in others and in themselves. If you feel that you have an almost supernatural intuition to perceive emotions around you, and if you carry within yourself a desire to heal and improve the world, it might be that you're a deep empath. And although your sensitivity sometimes hurts, it's also your greatest gift. The analytical observer, ISTP. The ISTP is the type of introvert who lives in constant pursuit of understanding how things work. They're practical, logical, and curious, with an almost natural ability to analyze systems and find quick and intelligent solutions. Unlike other profiles that prefer the world of abstract ideas, the ISTP likes the concrete, the real, something that can be studied, taken apart, and rebuilt. This introverted type is known as the silent engineer. They prefer to act instead of talk, and observe with attention everything around them before taking any action. Their mind works like a laboratory, always analyzing possibilities, calculating risks, and testing hypotheses. They don't like empty theories. They prefer practical and immediate results. The ISTP also has an adventurous and adaptable side. When necessary, they can act with speed and precision, whether to solve an emergency or to fix something complicated. This ability to stay calm under pressure is one of their greatest strengths. At the same time, because they're very reserved, the ISTP can be misinterpreted as someone cold or distant, when in reality they just prefer to act in silence. This introverted type is usually excellent in areas that require logical reasoning, strategy, or technical skills. They feel alive when they're learning through practice, taking something apart to understand how it works, or creating creative solutions to real problems. If you're the type who prefers to observe instead of talk, who likes to understand the hidden gears of the world and feels pleasure in solving problems alone, maybe you're an analytical observer. And this ability to unite silence and efficiency is a talent that few have. The reserved guardian, ISFJ. The ISFJ is the type of introvert who combines sensitivity, care, and silent loyalty. They're the guardian because they feel a natural need to protect those they love, even without saying a word. This profile has an enormous capacity for empathy, but unlike the INFJ, they don't live so much in the world of ideas, but in the practice of care. They demonstrate love through concrete actions, details, and gestures that often go unnoticed. This introverted type values harmony and emotional security. They prefer stable environments and trustworthy people, avoiding conflicts whenever possible. However, don't confuse this calm with passivity. The ISFJ is deeply resilient, and when something or someone they love is in danger, they become surprisingly strong. The ISFJ is meticulous, likes to do things in the best possible way, and worries about others' experiences. They're the type of person who remembers important dates, the small details that make a difference, and who keeps traditions alive. This behavior might give the impression that they live in the past, but in reality, they just value what has real meaning. Because they're so dedicated to others, the ISFJ runs the risk of forgetting about themselves, carrying more emotional weight than they should. They need to learn to set boundaries so they don't exhaust themselves, because their nature of caring is so strong that they often don't notice when they're sacrificing too much. If you identify as someone who prefers silence but observes everything, who likes to help without expecting recognition and feels genuine satisfaction in seeing others well, maybe you're a reserved guardian. And this role, although discreet, is one of the most powerful and necessary in the world. The interior artist, INFP. The INFP is the type of introvert most connected to the world of emotions, dreams, and hidden meanings of life. They're a true interior artist, someone who sees poetry in small things and carries within themselves a universe of ideas and feelings. Their imagination is vast and often more real than the external world itself. For the INFP, living is a journey of discovering purpose and authenticity. This profile doesn't settle for the obvious. They question the why of things, seek deep truths, and feel uncomfortable in superficial environments. The INFP values the freedom to be who they are, but also to allow others to be who they are. They have a compassionate nature, and often feel responsible for making the world a better place, even if it's through small actions or artistic creations. The INFP finds their voice in forms of expression like writing, music, painting, or any activity that allows them to transform feelings into something tangible. For them, art and emotion go hand in hand, and there's no clear division between who they are and what they create. However, this emotional intensity can make them feel overwhelmed or misunderstood, as if they lived in a world that doesn't speak the same language. This introverted type can spend hours reflecting on the meaning of life, human relationships, or existential questions. They're driven by deep values and prefer to be at peace with themselves rather than follow a path that doesn't resonate with their soul. This constant search for meaning is what makes them special. If you feel that your internal world is more alive than the external one, that your ideas and feelings are treasures that few can understand, maybe you're an interior artist. And this gift of creating beauty from sensitivity is one of the rarest forces someone can have. The silent realist, ISTJ. The ISTJ is the type of introvert who carries a silent and reliable strength. They believe that everything needs to have structure, logic, and consistency. and that's why they prefer environments where rules and responsibilities are clear. The ISTJ doesn't seek attention or recognition, but almost always is that person who keeps everything running, ensuring that nothing is forgotten or left to chance. This introverted type is deeply pragmatic. They don't get lost in daydreams or abstract ideas easily. They prefer concrete results and practical actions. For the ISTJ, keeping your word and respecting commitments is a matter of honor. This seriousness makes them be seen as someone reliable and even essential within groups or organizations. However, because they're so focused on maintaining order, the ISTJ can be interpreted as rigid or conservative. In reality, they just believe that a well-executed plan is more efficient than improvisation. They observe the world with attention, analyze risks, and prefer to be prepared for any situation. Their introversion appears in the desire to work in silence, without needing to expose themselves or receive applause. The ISTJ also values traditions and customs, but this doesn't mean they're old-fashioned. They understand that some structures work because they have purpose, and they don't see sense in breaking them just to follow trends. This clarity of values makes them someone stable and reliable, a true safe harbor for those around them. If you identify with the desire to keep everything organized, with the pleasure of seeing well-executed plans, and with confidence in your own silent capacity, maybe you're a silent realist. And, in a chaotic world, this ability to bring order and stability is a rare and necessary force. The deep communicator, ISFP. The ISFP is the type of introvert who prefers to express themselves through actions, emotions, and creations, instead of words. They're a true deep communicator, someone who speaks through aesthetics, beauty, and the experiences they offer others. For the ISFP, the world is like a blank canvas, ready to be painted with sensations, colors, and meanings. Their language is silent but intense, and each gesture reveals what they feel. This introverted profile is highly sensitive to the environment and to people's emotions around them. They value harmony and seek an authentic life, fleeing from situations or environments that seem false or superficial. Their greatest strength is in living the present with intensity, absorbing every detail, every sound, every sensation. This makes them a creative and often artistic person, with a natural ability to transform feelings into something tangible. The ISFP doesn't like to follow rigid rules or heavy routines. They need freedom to explore the world their way, even if it means walking unusual paths. This freedom is also in the way they express love or friendship, spontaneously, sincerely, and often silently. However, this emotional depth can make the ISFP feel displaced in an accelerated and noisy world. They prefer genuine connections to crowds and often find more peace in nature, in music, or in moments of creative solitude. If you feel that you communicate more with gestures than with words, that you find beauty in small things and prefer a free and authentic lifestyle, maybe you're a deep communicator. And your aesthetic sensitivity is a rare gift, capable of touching people without you needing to say a single word. The philosophical thinker, INTP. The INTP is the type of introvert who lives immersed in the world of ideas, questions, and theories. Known as the philosophical thinker, they have a restless mind, always seeking to understand how the universe works, what are the hidden truths behind things, and which patterns repeat in life. For the INTP, nothing is accepted simply as absolute truth. Everything needs to be analyzed, questioned, and often deconstructed. Their introversion manifests in the need for long periods of reflection. The INTP might seem distracted or with their head in the clouds, but in reality, they're exploring complex concepts, building theories, and imagining possibilities. This ability to think outside the box makes many great scientists, philosophers, and inventors share characteristics of this personality type. The INTP likes to explore the most difficult questions. Why are we here? How does this work? What if it were different? They don't seek quick answers, but deep understandings. However, this relentless search for knowledge can make them seem distant or disconnected from the present, as if they were always living inside their own mind. Another striking trait of the INTP is their logical creativity. They can connect apparently disconnected ideas, finding brilliant solutions to problems that others can't even understand. But at the same time, they can feel frustrated with rigid systems, senseless rules, or superficial conversations. If you feel pleasure in thinking about life's great mysteries, in taking apart concepts to understand how they work, and prefer moments of deep reflection to anything else, it's possible that you're a philosophical thinker. Your mind is like an infinite laboratory, and that's a rare and valuable gift. The hybrid enigma. Those who don't fit in there are introverts who can't fully identify with just one of the 8 types. They're like rare mixtures, bringing together characteristics from different profiles and, for that reason, seem to live on the border between various personalities. These hybrid enigmas might have the intuition of the INFJ, the logical mind of the INTJ, and at the same time, the emotional creativity of the INFP. This combination makes these people difficult to understand, even for themselves. Jung already said that no typology could explain the totality of an individual, because the human psyche is complex, dynamic, and is always in transformation. This means that, at certain moments, we can behave like a dominant type, but at others, characteristics of another profile appear. Hybrids represent this fluidity even more evidently. These rare introverts usually feel out of place, as if there were no label that described them completely. They might have phases of intense logical analysis, followed by periods of deep emotional creativity. This internal movement makes them be seen as inconsistent or unpredictable, when in reality, they're just living in a state of connection with multiple aspects of themselves. The great advantage of this hybrid type is versatility. They can move between different areas and ways of thinking, adapting to varied situations without losing their essence. This ability makes them complex, original people capable of finding creative solutions that escape others. If you feel that you fit into several types at the same time, that you can't define yourself with just one label, maybe you're a hybrid enigma. If you identified with this type, comment below. But why are these psychological types so misunderstood? We live in a society that values speed, exposure, and noise. Extroverts seem to have more space because they speak loud, show themselves easily, and are seen as naturally successful. In this scenario, the silent depth of introverts is frequently misinterpreted. Many believe that being introverted means being antisocial, cold, or uninterested, when in reality, it's just a different way of connecting with the world. The problem is that, while society applauds those who are always available and socially active, introverts prefer to observe, reflect, and act with purpose. This choice of silence isn't lack of courage, but a way to protect their energy and give attention to what really matters. The depth of an introvert is rare, and what is rare often scares or bothers those who can't understand it. Furthermore, introverts tend to value quality over quantity, whether in personal relationships or in projects. They don't seek a crowd of friends, but genuine connections. They don't speak just to fill silence, but to say something meaningful. This approach, in a world that loves superficiality, can be poorly viewed or even judged as weakness. Another factor that contributes to misunderstanding is that introverts don't feel the need to explain themselves. They don't shout their identity. They just are who they are. But this discretion can lead others to think that nothing is happening inside them, when in reality the greatest movement happens internally, in the world of ideas, feelings, and reflections. Understanding introverts requires patience, attention, and empathy. And those who can see beyond the surface discover a wealth of vision, creativity, and inner strength that can transform everything around them. The modern world usually overvalues those who speak louder, but true transformation often comes from those who observe in silence. Rare introverts have an uncommon internal strength, the ability to analyze deeply, to see invisible patterns, and to create solutions where others only see problems. This strength doesn't manifest in constant exposure, but in the silent impact that their ideas and actions can cause. Many geniuses in history, like Einstein, Newton, and even Carl Jung, were introverts. They understood that silence is fertile, that time alone isn't a sign of weakness, but a laboratory for great ideas. The power of the introvert lies in the ability to focus, to imagine, and to transform an internal vision into something concrete. While others get distracted by the world's noise, the introvert finds clarity in introspection. Another little recognized power is authenticity. Introverts don't easily mold themselves to social expectations, because they value more what makes sense to them than what pleases everyone. This makes them silent and reliable leaders, capable of inspiring without needing to impose their presence. When an introvert speaks, their words carry weight, precisely because they're not said in excess. Rare introverts are also masters in active listening. They understand others deeply, capturing what isn't said, perceiving emotions and contexts. This sensitivity is an advantage in any relationship or environment, whether professional, creative, or personal. If you're one of these rare introverts, remember, your silence has power, your vision has value, and your way of living is a unique force. The world needs people who think deeply and act with purpose. What today makes you seem different is exactly what makes you special and necessary. Being a rare introvert is carrying within yourself a silent force that doesn't need applause to exist. While the world runs after visibility and noise, you find meaning in silence, in deep reflections, and in true connections. Your way of seeing life, with more care and depth, is what makes you someone different. And this isn't something to be changed, but valued. Great ideas and transformations almost always come from the minds of people who allow themselves to observe before acting, who prefer to think instead of simply reacting. You don't need to be understood by everyone, because your value isn't in fitting into superficial patterns, but in being true to your essence. What today might seem like a strangeness in others' eyes, tomorrow might be recognized as your greatest virtue. Accepting who you are, with all your layers, is the first step to transforming yourself and the world around you.